linear functions. Now we're going to do something called the average rate of change. And it's really just the same thing as slope. So what does average mean? So if I have test 1 and I get 80% on test 1, and on test 2 I get 90%, I say, what is my average mark? Well, I just add the 2 and divide by 2, and I get 85%. So the word average just means I'm just going to add them together, divide by 2 to see what is my overall mark, okay? So when I use the word average here, I'm saying approximately what is the slope. But when I use the word slope, say with my mother, she won't really understand. So what I want to I want to use language that's talking more about the story. So when things change, you can have it changing slow or you can have it changing fast. And this says, what's the rate of change? Is it changing fast or slow? And what is the average rate of change? So تقريبا, approximately. Okay? So we have this formula that says, okay, if I have a function and I want to find the average rate of change, I have to find it between an interval on the x-axis. Okay, so this is on the x-axis. And my average rate of change, which is really just the slope, is equal to how much change in y versus how much change in x. Well, if I have 2 points, here's my 2 points, my slope is just how much change in x over how much change in y, okay? So that's always been my slope. That's my rise, that's my run, okay? So I'm just writing slope differently here. So remember that y equals, I'm just giving you an example, 2x plus 1. We know that's an equation. I can change it into a function, and I can go f of x equals 2x plus 1. So y and f of x are kind of just the same thing. It's like your name is Muhammad to your mother, but your friends call you Mo. It's kind of the same thing. So you have to remember when you see f of x, just think y. So slope, remember, slope is equal to, you subtract the y's on the top, and you subtract the x's on the top. And then you go, it has to be 0.2 first and then 0.1 after. So the f's represent the y, same. And then my interval on the bottom is really just subtracting 2 x values. So this formula is just the same as our slope formula. Okay, it's just written slightly different. So let's look at this example first. So it says, what is the average rate of change? What is the slope for the function this, which is the green line, a parabola? That's the name of the shape. Between these 2 points. So I have these 2 points and I say, what's the slope between those points? So if I look at the green line, the slope is changing. Here the slope looks like this, but then when you go up, the slope starts getting more steep. Well, there's different slope here and there's a different slope here. So what I want is my average slope. So I'm going to look at, same like here I did test 1 and test 2, add them together and divide by 2. I'm going to find an average slope because the slope is different here and different here. Okay, so we're going to find the average slope. So first you have to find the interval on the x-axis between the points. So I'm only going to look on the x-axis between the 2 points. So I'm going to cover this up. Let's only look on the x-axis. Okay, so here's my interval right there on the x-axis. The smallest point here is -2, and here it's 0. Okay, so my interval that I'm looking at for this piece right here is when x is -2 and when x is 0. So how did I know that? Well, I can look here. Here's my 2 points. My smallest x value is -2, and my biggest x value is 0. So I'm looking at this interval. I'm only looking at where this function exists on the x-axis between those 2 points. Okay, so my interval, you can look at your picture, your graph, and find the smallest x and smallest y, or you can look at the points. -2 is the smallest x, 0 is the smallest or the biggest x. So there's my interval. Okay, so now, according to the formula, we have a's and b's. Okay, a's and b's here. So A is the first one, B is the second one. So this is A, this is B. Okay, and it says on the bottom of this formula, because I just copied out the formula, I just go the big one, subtract the little one. So 0 subtract -2 on the bottom. Okay, now in order to find the values on the top, I have to go, okay, f of b, well, what's b? B is 0. That's not an f. F of 0 is equal to, where's my formula? Here, my function. So instead of x, I'm going to put a 0. That's 0 minus 3, so that's -3. So -3 goes in place f of b. So right there. See? I put it there. Now I have to do f of a. So what's a? -2. Oops, equal sign. So make sure you use brackets when you have a negative and a squared, because your calculator will do it wrong if you don't. So that's a 4 if you use brackets. If you forget brackets, it's a -4, which is wrong. So that equals 1. So then f of a is 1. Here, I put f of a is 1. And then I just put that in my calculator, and I go, oh, here's my slope. So if I make that into a fraction, my slope says go down 2 over 1. Okay, that's my slope here. You can see that the blue line is different from the green line because we're finding the average slope. Takriban, it says it's like test 1 and test 2. I didn't get an 85. I got an 80 and a 90, but the average is 85. So here I'm averaging out the slope and saying, okay, well down here it's not as steep, and up here it's a really steep slope, but on average the slope is -2. Okay, so let's look at a real example. We'll do it together. So it says, what is the average rate of change, slope? What is the slope for the function between the 2 points? Okay, let me just graph it quick because I like pictures. So that's -2 and 5. And the other one is 1, 2. So there's my line. I'm going to find the slope of this line, but using this function, okay? So what is the interval? What's the smallest x value? -2. What's the biggest x value? 1. So my interval is between -2 and 1. If you didn't want to draw it, you could just go, here's my smallest x value, here's my biggest x value, and use those. Now my average rate of change, let's write out the formula first. F of b minus f of a over, now I take the same letters, b minus a. So my interval is AB. That will help me remember what's a and what's b. So the bottom is easy. I just take the big one, subtract the little one. Oops, I forgot -2. Be careful, it's subtract -2. Okay? So now I have to do f of b. Well, what's b? b is 1. So f of 1, where's my function? X squared plus 1. So I'm going to go 1 squared plus 1. So that's equal to 1 plus 1 equals 2. So f of b is 2. F of b is 2. Now I'm going to do f of a. A is -2. So I have to go f of -2 equals, where's my function? So instead of x, I'm going to put a -2. Use your brackets in your calculator. That's 4 plus 1 equals 5. So f of a equals 5. So now I can put that all in my calculator, or I'll go slow. A negative and a negative is a plus. Oh, same over same. If I have 3 over 3, it's equal to 1, but there's this negative here, so it's really -1. So my slope is -1. Okay? So my average rate of change is -1. Okay? So let's look at the next one. So if I have a function, I do it this way. But if I don't have a function and I have a story, do it a little bit differently. Okay? So this is when I have a story, not a function. In 1980, the average monthly rate for basic cable TV in the United States was almost $8. What is this? You know how you can have different packages with Ooredoo and Vodafone for your TV? So you can have the sports channels, you can have the movie channels. Well, if you have the basic channels, it means you don't have any extra packages. So their basic channels in the United States cost about $8 in 1980. But in 2008, it went up to $46 just for the basic channels. So now it says assume a linear relationship. That means they said assume it's a straight line. You don't really have to read that. It just means it's a straight line, a linear relationship. Find the average rate of change, the slope, in the monthly rate per year. Graph is a line segment. A line segment, this is a line where it goes on forever and ever on both sides. A line segment starts and stops. It does not go on forever. So let's graph it. So here we have X and here we have Y, and it says in 1980, wait, here's 1980, it was almost $8. Where's $8? Okay, so it's somewhere between 5 and 10, so that would be $7.50. So it's approximately there. So if I want to graph a point, it's always XY. Well, X is the year, so I'm going to put the year first. What is 1980? And then I'm going to put Y, which is the money. And it was $7.69. There's my first point. Now my second point is 2008. Ooh. So here it goes up by 5. See, it goes up by 5. So let's break this into 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't have to be perfect, just approximate. 2008. So that would be here. And then it says it's almost 40, it's like $46. Well, that's 45, so it's a little bit higher than that line. So this point is 2008, and it's $46 and like 13 cents. Okay, and it says graph as a line segment. Okay, so we're graphing it as a line segment. Line segment starts and stops. This is a line. This is a line segment. Okay. All right. Now it says, what is the interval? So the interval is always on the x-axis. Where does this exist on the x-axis? Well, it exists from 1980 up to 2008. Which one's the smallest? This one. So I go 1980 up to 2008. There. That's my interval. That's A and that's B. Okay? So now I'm going to show you how to do it without the formula. I'm going to do this. Now remember, slope is the chain. You do the subtract your x's on the bottom and the y's on the top. So this is the change in the y's, and this is the change in the x's. Okay, that's what my slope is. So let's think of it that way. So change in y and the change in x. So It went from 1980 up to 2008. Oops, you can't see the bottom. Well, how many years is that? What's the change in years? Is it 10 years, 5 years, 7 years? It went up by how many years? Well, I don't know. Let's subtract. Let's go 2008, subtract 1980. Oh, look, we just did B minus A. This minus this. That's the formula. B minus A goes on the bottom. So if you want to find the change in the x values, you just subtract them and you do the biggest one, subtract the smallest one. Now the change in the y's, we have the smallest one is $7.69 and it went up to $46. What's the change? How much did it go up? I just subtract the biggest one from the smallest one. So I just go 46.13 minus 7.69. So I'm just going to subtract the change because that's all slope is. How much does it change? I don't know the answer. I have to use a calculator. 38.44 over 28. Okay, so, but I need to make it more simple. So use your calculator, and it's approximately equal to 137. Okay, what does that mean? 137. So let's change it back into a fraction, okay? Put it over 1. So that's 1.37 over 1. And what's the bottom number represent? Years. See, we're talking about years. So what does this really tell us? This tells us that every year, the average price for the basic package goes up by $1.37. Does it go up $1.37 every year? No. Maybe some years it goes up $5. Maybe some years it goes up $2. Maybe some years it doesn't go up anything. But the average approximate amount it goes up every year is $1.37. That's why we call it the average rate of change. On average, how much is it changing? It's changing about $1.37 every year. Okay. Now remember, I always put answers on the bottom of the page, so you can always check if you're doing it on your own. Okay. That's why we say average rate of change.